Angus Chamber, there's me, there's our office manager, Donna, there's Katie, Keith and Vince from our international team, Sarah, who's our events and marketing guru, Ross, who looks after our membership. Poor Ross is just in month 2 of a membership recruitment role, and I bet he's like, I can't get anybody in the door. So every single member of our team is multitasking to the extreme, which is brilliant. And then we've got Damon from and I always get this wrong. I'll just say it quick, Dumbartonshire. And I have put an N here, it's meant to be an M. We've got Claire from Ayrshire and Sarah from Murray. So Sarah Young, over to you, if that's all right.
Fab. Just to let you all know, we are recording this. Obviously we can share it wider with the network and we'll be using it ourselves. So if you don't want to be videoed, then turn your video camera off. If you hover your button over the images of us all, you'll see a wee video camera. Click on that and it'll bring a slash over it, and that means that your camera is switched off. I'm going to share my screen with you. I will say this is only the 3rd webinar that we've done, so if there's anything that doesn't go right, then I apologise, and we are still learning. What we've done is just created quite a kind of quick presentation so that we remember what we're speaking about, but just to give you a little bit of kind of screenshots and whatnot for what we've done. So we, I think it was kind of this time last week that we decided we would start kind of taking webinars on a more regular basis. We've started a coffee and cake webinar, which is on a Tuesday at 2:30 for an hour. And that's just to get members together to speak about their business issues, have a catch up. We used to do kind of regular monthly networking sessions, but obviously we can no longer do those. So these are kind of replacing them. So we held our first one yesterday, went down really well. I think we had about 20 people on the webinar. They all got to kind of ask questions. They all got to see a little bit about their organisation and what challenges they were facing. So it went down really well. So we're still listing all these on the website. What you'll see is that we are not sharing the links for the webinar straight away. What we want people to do is actually to be registering online so that we can see who's coming along, who is interested in it. And we've just got a better kind of guidance on how many people we're going to be handling as well. So that's what we're listing on the website. Prior to the event, so 12 o'clock yesterday, I sent out an email to everybody who had pre-registered. Now the event yesterday was for members only. The webinar we've got tomorrow is for members and non-members. We decided to keep our coffee and cake to members only so that the members are still having something exclusive to them. Still hopefully see a little bit of benefit in their membership as well. So an email was sent out yesterday just with a kind of brief overview of what we'll be doing, who will be covering what, and a link to that Microsoft Teams as well. The good thing about Microsoft Teams is you don't have to download anything. You know, if you don't have Teams, you don't have to. I attempted to attend a webinar on Friday and gave up after 20 minutes because there was blocks and plugins and downloads, and it just wasn't working. So I ended up giving up. So Teams is really good. There is no, you know, you don't need to download that, and that's something that we're saying to members as well. You know, don't worry if you don't have Teams. You know, you don't need Teams. You just need to click on the link and join basically. So I also gave members a chance to submit some questions that they might have had. So those were sent on to Vince, and we'll come on to kind of how Vince managed those later on. But we gave them until 2 o'clock to send in any questions, just so that we had some kind of preempted questions, and if we needed to you know, look at some of the answers and how we're going to answer those, then we had a little bit of time. Also advised them that, you know, we're going to be recording it. What else? That their mics would be automatically muted. Just try to give them a little bit of information before the webinar actually went ahead, so they knew what to expect. The management of the actual webinar. So we've been working with around about 2 or 3 team members to each handle different parts of the session, and both Vince and Keith are going to come on to that later on. I think it's key to kind of have those roles. Not one person can't manage these webinars really. We create a chat bar at the side, so we've got somebody monitoring that. We get people to wait in a lobby rather than coming in individually. What else? We have one person kind of hosting it, and try and get the kind of speakers on board beforehand so that we can go through any technical stuff and whatnot. I'm going to hand over to Vince, I think it is, if I know how to.
Yeah, it's all right. I'll take it.
You're there, Vince. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Good afternoon, everybody. So I just want to talk a little bit about setting up a lobby. Microsoft Teams is quite good for setting up a lobby, and we found initially that we wanted to have a little chat before everybody came into the room. We wanted to discuss exactly who was doing what and how we were going to manage the webinar. So we decided to use the lobby function on Microsoft Teams, and I don't know if anybody knows of this function or has seen this function. Once you create the meeting, once you create the event, you can go back into it, and the first slideshot here shows the meeting options. And if you click on meeting options, that'll open up a web browser and you'll be able to see the meeting options, one of which is the lobby. We found in our testing that if you don't change the second setting, who can present, to only people in your organization, you'll find that delegates that are coming into your webinar will start to bring everybody else from the lobby in. They might do it accidentally, it might just be a click. But where you just wanted maybe one person in, maybe you just wanted the speakers in, all of a sudden you've got 20 people in, and you have to try and manage that. So we found that changing these options to both people in my organization allows you to manage that chat just a little bit better. You should be able to find tutorials on Google if you're having difficulty doing this, or you can contact us, and I'm happy to talk anybody through how to do it. It's just the screenshots that I've got today. I think Keith is going to talk a little bit about the management of the webinar. So Keith, do you want to take control?
Sure thing. The bit I'm going to discuss with you is a little bit more just about kind of the etiquette of running the webinars and like things to keep in mind. So a big one is ask all people attending to mute their microphones. If you've got someone controlling the chat while you're presenting the webinar, they can actually be monitoring the attendee list, and they can actually mute anyone that comes into it as they come in. If someone's joining late and they don't get this little bit at the start saying, please mute your microphones. Reason for that is it'll reduce feedback. A lot of people won't be using headphones. And if you've not got headphones on and your microphone's active, it'll just create like a little feedback loop, and you'll just hear the voice echoing, and it can become unmanageable if there's too many microphones opened. What we've been asking people to do is to use our chat feature. So I'll come off of this in a second to show you how to access the chat, but when you go into the conversation, you can ask people to type @ and then whoever is being assigned to manage the chat. So we've used Vince for both of our previous ones, so we can then get people to put @ Vince, and then they can ask a question, and that means when it comes to the Q&A, we've had someone monitoring the questions, and it just means that we can then fire them back out, and it allows us to have a greater deal of control over the conversation at the end, and just so we don't have people all trying to turn on mics and all starting to shout across each other, because it just doesn't work. As Sarah did at the start, make sure you're warning everyone that it is being recorded. It's just for data protection, so you're free of the imageries. But it is just as a little, to protect yourselves. And the good thing about Teams is when you hit the record button, it appears on everyone's screen saying this is being recorded. So that does kind of work quite well. But yeah, just courtesy, say to them they can turn off their cameras if they don't want to be in it. And the screen sharing part, there are 2 different main things that you can do, which I'll come off this to show you. So what we have right now is presentation mode. So it's like an actual presentation gets put into it. Whereas the other option is to share different screens, so you can show, like if you're wanting to use a PDF document, for example, you can then show that PDF, or if you've got a specific image you want to show. The time management section is more just along the lines of be prepared that there probably will be some form of technical difficulty. There will be a presenter that doesn't manage to get in, or someone's microphones will be on and you'll have to stop to manage that. So just allow those little extra buffer times, because something will probably go wrong. And just in a way, it will never be a major catastrophe, but it's just little things that might, you might lose 5 minutes out of your hour. And then for the finding your presentations, that's another screen share thing. So I should be able to, I'm gonna have to stop your presentation for the moment. Righty. So for a screen share, so I'm just going to screen share my Teams thing first, and then I'll show you our things. So you'll now all have my screen share. This is you can actually use, like, other people in your team can request control, so that's quite a useful thing. So just to kind of briefly go over everything, as Sarah mentioned earlier, you can turn your camera off, and then no one will be able to see it. You can hide from everyone. There's the mute button, so that everyone can be muted. This button here is where you'll go to do a screen share. And then when you click on that along the bottom, unfortunately I can't show you because the screen, this is the one fault in the screen share. Along the bottom, you'll have the options of what windows you have open and presentations you have available. In the presentation section, if you go to browse, any presentations that you've uploaded into Teams, you will be able to find. So if you just have good file management, you can then, any presentation, as we've been doing it in presentation mode. You've got your more actions, so this is just things like you can change your camera, you can blur your background so no one can see what's happening behind you. So that's quite a useful little one if you're not wanting people to see all your wall art, and just little things like that. It's also where you find your recording button. The conversation, as we were discussing, let's shift this. So this is where we would be doing this. So simply, if I wanted to, alert someone in the chat, anyone that's in here, you can do it to. So I can do, Vince Mitchell, and I can just put in a question of, just how do I ask you a question? Nice and easily. And then we can do that, and then that will appear in the chat for everyone. So you can actually read through them yourself, or we'll then manage it, and then we can then ask you to come in later. The only other tab that you need to worry about is the show participants. So this is where I can control what's happening. So I can go through people and mute anyone whose microphones are open. Unfortunately, I don't think you can unmute someone, so everyone has to be aware that they have to unmute themselves. But you can go here and you can click on more options and you can mute a participant. Or if they're really annoying you, you can remove them from the conversation as well. But hopefully that won't happen. And that's pretty much everything for like managing the webinar as you go. But as Sarah mentioned, it is useful to have a few people all kind of doing it together, so that you can have, like, so if someone's doing the speaking, have someone else managing the chat, and just also checking that attendee list occasionally to make sure that everyone is muted. There's no feedback loops, because you'll instantly notice if there is one. So it's just kind of like getting into these little habits of, rather than people shouting and raising their hand, you just have to do it these ways, and that's just kind of the methods that we found. So I think I'm handing back over to Vince for the last little bit on chat management. I don't know how much more is going to add to that, and I think we'll need to reshare that presentation.
Yeah, I think you've already went over most of the key points that I was going to raise. One thing that I found, we ran the coffee and cake chat yesterday, and it's very, very easy in Microsoft Teams to get overwhelmed by the chat. Where you've got numerous people talking at the same time, and having the likes of Alison or Sarah or one of the other team members in just to prompt you if you've missed anything is really, really valuable. Especially yesterday, we'd pitched a question, and all of a sudden your chat's just flooded with comments and questions, and the last thing you want to do is ignore anybody or overlook a key piece of information that's in there. So it's really valuable having that third person that can prompt you to go, Vince, you need to raise this or pass the mic to this person. So that was definitely useful for us. But I don't think there's much more I could add on what Keith said there. The tagging's definitely essential. And the asking questions before the webinar was hugely useful yesterday. We had 5 questions before we even started. And in the first webinar, there was just dead silence when we asked people. So that was really good. But that's all I've got to add to that. Sarah, do you want to take over?
You're muted.
No, I just got a big thing saying your microphone's muted. So on our coffee and cake webinar yesterday, Paul Sykes from Fife Chamber actually joined us. I don't think Paul is on this.
No.
No, okay, so sorry, I'm just looking at the questions that he's asking. How do you control invitations to the members? How do you provide a login for them, for example? So that's really just kind of what I went over in the beginning with the, you know, we get people to register online. We don't, what we did do, so the webinar last Thursday was an open to all. What we did in the first instance was get people to register. And then around about an hour or half an hour beforehand, we just put the link up online so that people could actually still click on it and join the webinar at a later stage. Oh, sorry, I got conversations.
That's my fault, isn't it? Sorry. I didn't want to rudely interrupt you, just to say, could you unshare your screen again so we could see everybody's face if they're still around?
So I was going to say it's not me that's sharing it. It was somebody. I think it was Keith that was sharing it.
That's when you take control.
Yeah. So I'm.
While you're just looking for that, the only other thing I would say is that if you've got more than one device, and say you've got the Teams app on your phone, and you're joined the meeting on your laptop, you can look at the chat on your phone without kind of affecting your first use of the actual meeting. So that can be quite handy where you want to pay attention to who's talking, but actually you still want to kind of see the chat and try and keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Are you all doing this from your laptop, or are any of you doing it off the iPad? Because at the moment, this is our first week working from home and we're having a bit of technical challenges. Our stuff seems very slow on the laptop. So I'm not sure whether we would be able to do it from the iPad. Do you think that's a possibility, or?
I don't.
Maybe so maybe you don't know the answer.
Yeah, we've not tried it via the iPad, and I don't know if you still get the same functions. I don't know if you can still share your screen. Yeah. I don't know if you can. I mean, I know that I believe some of the attendees yesterday were using either a phone or an iPad.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing about the phone and the iPad, so if you use your mobile phone, you only get 2 screens, so 2 images, okay. I believe. I don't know what the iPad brings up, whether that splits it into 4 or splits it into 2.
Yeah, I've got 4 at the moment. Yeah. I'm using my iPad.
Yeah, on a mobile phone it is just 2, but okay. you still you know, if somebody is sharing their screen, you still get that share screen function. Yeah. You know, you don't just sit with those 2 people on your screen.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't know if you get the same functions.
I don't think you will, but it's just, as I say, we're having technical issues, so it was just to
say. When you log into and join on the web, I think you get more or less the same. It looks very similar to the actual app on Teams on your laptop, so it might be worth having a look at it online. But again, I don't know I'm not sure if I've only seen when I shared the link around the Chief Exec's group. I certainly looked at that online, and it looked absolutely the same as what I'm now seeing on my laptop. So that might be an option. And you should be able to log into Teams through your online portal as well, your like Microsoft online portal. So that might give you all the same.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a cute unicorn. Any other questions?
There was another question from Paul regarding the lobby. Keith, I know you've done the kind of screen shares of how to set it up. Can you just go through how you actually manage it, and what, you know, how do people know that there's people waiting in the lobby, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, sure, if you do that. So all that will happen, so I'll just go to do a screen share. There we go. So how it'll work is is you'll have like basically as someone tries to log in, it'll pop up here saying somebody is in the lobby, and you'll just get a number appearing there. And then what you'll get is when you go into here, it'll show you everyone that's currently in the meeting. And then it'll also show you at the very bottom people that have been invited that have not yet arrived. And then above this, there will be a tab saying in lobby. and then what you'll have the option is at the very top where like this mute all button is, you'll have the option to allow everyone in, or where like the mute button is showing, as you go down there, it'll be like a little tick or a little X, and so you can actually invite a person, or you can just kick them before they've even been invited, saying you were not invited to this meeting. So that's kind of the three main buttons for doing something like that. Because we don't have anyone in the lobby, I can't physically show you. And if any of our team left and tried to come in, they just instantly get in because they're part of our team. But effectively, you'll see it the first time you have it, you'll get the option to allow them into the lobby or into the meeting from the lobby. And when you're in a lobby, you'll just have a little screen just saying, someone will soon let you in.
We used that pretty successfully with our first webinar with members speaking in it, because we said to them, you join us 10 minutes beforehand so we could test their screens and their microphones, and we just held all the attendees in the lobby until we were sure we were ready. And actually, you know, we had a problem because, you know, one of our speakers couldn't get in and couldn't get connected and all sorts of things. So that was definitely, that saved us scrabbling around while 40 people kind of joined a conversation where we looked like we didn't really know what we were doing, when we were still making it up as we were going along.
Yeah, we always have one person, so it tends to be Vince. Poor Vince is our lobby manager and chat manager for these webinars. But it is good just having one person, you know, managing the lobby, because what you'll do is you'll have the person, you know, say it's Alison that's, you know, presenting, and she doesn't have the ability to be you know, managing that lobby at the same time. And what you also find is that even though you say, you know, it's going to start at 12, 10 past, quarter past, 20 past 12, you may still have some people clicking on that link. With our coffee and cake webinar yesterday for our members, although I sent out the pre-event information at 12 o'clock, we still had people signing up at 5 past, 10 past, no, just after 2:30 when it had actually started. So they quickly got, I was then quickly emailing them a link whilst other people were speaking. So it's just, I guess, kind of deciding how you're going to manage it all and who manages it. And to be honest, what we also do as well is we'll have a chat, I don't know, in the morning of the event, or, you know, even an hour before the event, just as to who's doing what and how and when. And we also join the meeting earlier. You know, so say the event's at 2:30, you know, we'll all be there at 20 past 2. Just to, you know, that last kind of run through of who's doing what, everybody's okay with everything, everybody's managed to log in as well. That's the important thing, and that you're all good to go and you're not joining after the attendees really. But the lobby function is really good. Just keeping people back until you are actually ready.
Can I ask a question? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
So we've been I think you know, it's been chaotic. So I think someone looked at Teams and then we ended up with Zoom, which is pretty similar, actually, I would say. I don't know if it has the lobby function, which sounds like a really good thing, because we actually, what I was saying before, you know, I did a wee bit, you saw it, Alison, didn't you, in the WhatsApp, and you've covered a lot of these points, which we kind of, you know, did for our first event. The preparation is absolutely key. And actually, if you're doing a big one, I would say do it the day before, you know, so you're not, you know, if you're doing a big webinar, you expect, you know, 50 odd people to be part of it. You know, you might not, half an hour might not be enough time, sort of thing. So like you're saying, you know, maybe the day before, sort of thing. But one of the things, did I miss, how do you ask a question? Because there's a wee hands up thing in Zoom, which is great because it didn't, and you don't have to go to the chat, sort of thing. Is there a way, anything in Teams along those lines? Not
that we've found, no.
Okay.
No.
Because that's actually really useful, because someone speak like there, I was like, didn't want to interrupt, but, you know, so I guess it's maybe something I should mention as well. You guys have sort of talked about the setup and what we call a producer for the, you know, someone to do the chat and manage the technical stuff. What is probably good, I think I'd put this in my wee note as well, is briefing the people who come in as how it's all going to work. So if you want to ask a question, maybe you ask the person who's the producer to, you know, ask him it through the chat, and he'll do a personal message to, you know, whoever the host or whatever is, sort of thing. So that was the something that was very useful. But I think you need to be able to do that if you've got a kind of interactive session going on.
What we probably have actually missed in this, actually, Damon, is we do a kind of a screen share to all the attendees when they're on. So we'll do a little bit of an intro and what to expect, and then somebody will share the screen with attendees to show them how to switch your video off, how to unmute yourself, how to ask a question, and just kind of walk people through it, because we know that not everybody's actually used Teams before and will know how to use. And it's, if you know how to use it, it's fine. If you don't know how to use it, it might be a little bit difficult. So yeah, we do kind of share that screen and just go through with people actually how to do things, how to ask questions, etc.
Which is great for them, because what we're finding, people haven't used Zoom before, so it's giving them a wee 5-minute learning session to go.
Yeah,
so they've got confidence to take part in these or do them themselves, sort of thing. But no, that's good. Before we move on, can I also ask, because we're about to do, so we did one last night to 50 odd, and it went really well because all the people that managed it had, you know, were absolutely spot on and knew what they were doing with all the chats, and, you know, the co-host was brilliant, you know, in terms of there was all sorts of interactions between the panel and stuff, so it worked really well, I think, because everyone kind of knew what they were doing and the format and the questions and what have you, so that did work really well. But we're now going to try to fill our lack of the networking gap. And I wanted to, whether we use Teams or Zoom, I don't know. But I was going to ask, what tips would you have for that format? Because I'm thinking we couldn't have really more. I'm thinking maybe 20 people, because otherwise it becomes unmanageable. Maybe people don't get a chance to engage if there's more than that, sort of thing. So I'm just wondering how the more informal networking thing worked and how you manage that interaction.
So at yesterday's coffee and cake, we'd obviously asked people to send in questions beforehand, which we got a few questions from. So Vince kind of managed that and said, you know, Jonathan, you know, I know you've got a question, you know, if you want to unmute yourself, then ask that. And then we got people down the chat bar to be, you know, answering the question. And if somebody had a good answer to it, then Vince would go, oh, you know, Simon, you know, I think you've got a couple of comments for that. So we've got one person who manages it completely.
Okay.
Depending on the amount of time you have and the duration of the event, we only had about 20 people on the chat yesterday, and what we did was bring them in kind of one by one, just to say, you know, what their organisation is, how they're coping with working remotely, or how they're coping with, you know, managing their manufacturing site or whatever, and just gave them kind of two minutes to kind of speak about that. I guess it's not one of your kind of normal networking sessions as such, and it never will be, but it is. We still kind of gave people a platform to be able to speak. I mean, what you can use within the chat is you can speak to one another as well. Okay. You know, so while somebody else is speaking, you could go, you know, hi Alison, you know, great to see you on the webinar today, you know, how's things, or something like that. So
a personal message through the chat. Yeah, I think Zoom has that as well. So that is useful.
But yeah, depending on, you know, your times, it is trying to give everybody a little bit of a platform to say something, but, you know, it isn't going to be manageable with huge numbers.
Well, I'm thinking 20 seems like a reasonable amount. Otherwise people start to get lost, I would say.
Yeah, Damon, the other thing that we did yesterday during that kind of answering of questions is we sort of encouraged people in the chat to give their thoughts on, you know, because somebody was talking about what was an architect. So he was saying, and normally when I get a new customer, I would go and see them, I would see their space, we would take measurements. I'm just not sure how to kind of handle that first step. And so there was a whole bunch of people then came back and said, you know, I've FaceTimed initial conversations, we've, you know, and we got a bunch of responses, and the chat is still available after the meeting as well. but also then when we could see people answering and actually they had a pretty good answer, then we kind of said, actually, Jen, do you want to kind of come in and expand a bit on your answer? So there was a bit of then kind of to and fro in between one member answering another member and stuff.
Yeah, no, that's how I kind of imagined it. You know, you look at it and there's no way you can do traditional networking, but it is kind of, it's managed networking is what I would maybe describe it.
Yeah,
as.
and I think what we found, because we've done a whole team, or there's us and DYW, we did a kind of a get together last Friday, and the ones that everybody was off mute and our quiet people just kind of sat in the background and participated, but you know, didn't really get a chance to kind of say much. So that was why we chose with our members thing to actually say to people, you know, use the chat and then we'll invite you in towards the end to kind of say your bit, because we didn't want people to feel like they hadn't had a chance to speak up.
Cool.
What you'll also find, we had a couple of members yesterday who just didn't have a microphone.
Okay.
So, you know, they couldn't say anything verbally, but, you know, we encouraged them to put something into the chat, you know, if they had any issues or how they were coping and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just
to, so this is a really useful, you know, because it's kind of, you know, reinforcing what you're doing right and then filling gaps that, you know, is really useful to do this. And I don't know, we might end up using, you know, probably Zoom is popular, Teams is popular, so you might end up finding yourself using multi platforms. They are very similar. So I'm just wondering, out of this, I mean, even with my notes, well, you've covered a lot of, we could maybe create a quick one pager on how to, you know, like some of the things we've picked up. The preparation is absolutely key. So I wonder if that would be quite useful out of this as well, to share with other members and say, you know, this is particularly applicable to Zoom and Teams, but because we can't, you know, unless you've got an expert on all of these things, then you'd need to go. But that's maybe something that could come, but that would be quite a useful takeaway. From
Does anybody have any questions? Because I'm conscious we're now over our time.
Yeah, just a quick one from me in terms of accessibility of Teams. We're pretty much in the same boat as Damon. We've done a couple of things with members. We're in between Zoom and Teams. We've got both. We've got access to both. But I'm finding some of the people like Highlands and Islands Enterprise and whatever can't, and the bank necessarily can't go into Zoom because they haven't got permission to do it. Are they more likely to have permission for Microsoft than they would for Zoom, probably?
So I did a meeting this week with our local authorities, and a couple of them said, oh, we're having difficulty accessing the Teams meeting, but what they did is, I think it was their work email wasn't playing, so what they did was used a personal email to get the invitation link, and then they were able to access it online. So we had a couple of people that did think they were going to have problems with Teams that didn't. And I think because Teams is now completely free, offered by Microsoft, and the schools are all accessing it, so I have a feeling that most people will be able to get around Teams. If there's one thing, I mean, there's a couple. Both those platforms are really different, aren't they? Zoom gives you a telephone number access. Teams doesn't. We couldn't find it anyway. And Damon's right. The hands up in Zoom is really good. And it doesn't look like Teams has got a similar function, but yeah. And
the lobbying thing's really good to, you know, actually be able to gather people, because we were sort of gathering early and people arrived early. And having the conversations
Vince on our Teams put a thing in the chat to say that Zoom's got waiting rooms, which is similar to Teams' lobby. So
right. Okay.
Yeah.
I might end up just putting a poll out to see which ones people would rather I use, because it's 6.5 for me right now.
I think so, yeah.
I do appreciate the Dundee team going to all that effort for us, so thank you.
That's all right, you're very welcome.
Very good.
Any more questions, or we'll just finish up, I think, and then what we'll do is we'll share this round on email, or on WhatsApp or whatever.
Cool.
No, we're done.
No, that's been really helpful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Nice to see everybody.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
Bye,
See you later.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.